I never imagined that the hardest part of my wedding wouldn't be the planning, the dress, or even the vows, but deciding who didn't deserve a seat at the front row. My name is Caroline, and this is the story of how I chose peace over blood, truth over tradition, and built a future without the people who broke me. Here's what really happened. My fingers trembled as I stared at the text from my father. The ivory silk of my wedding dress whispered against the edge of the window seat in the bridal loft, the Colorado mountains visible through the tall glass behind me. The message glared from the screen. Final chance. Invite Melanie or find someone else to walk you down the aisle. A knock at the door startled me and my phone slipped into the folds of my dress. Caroline? My wedding coordinator, Julie, peeked in. We need to confirm the processional. Your father, he said, there's been a change. My voice snagged in my throat, but I made it come. There has. Just, give me a minute. But the truth was, the change had started 3 weeks earlier, over a dinner I should have skipped. That night, crystal glasses clinked against porcelain plates as my father poured his second glass of Pinot Noir. The scent of his herb-roasted lamb filled the air, but the knots in my stomach had formed before I even stepped into his Napa Valley home. She's your sister, Caroline. For God's sake. He set the wine bottle down a little too hard. Red swirled to the lip of his glass. This grudge has gone on long enough. I shifted a carrot across my plate, keeping my voice calm. The woman who slept with my fiancé 5 years ago doesn't get to celebrate my wedding. That was ancient history. Blake meant nothing to her. His fingers tapped a restless rhythm against the linen tablecloth. Family is family. You need to move on. Move past the fact that she seduced the man I plan to marry? The carrot snapped under my fork. Or past you blaming me for not choosing someone more manly? He leaned in, face flushed. I said what you needed to hear. And now I'm saying this, Melanie attends the wedding or I won't walk you down the aisle. Simple. The dining room tilted. I blinked hard, unwilling to let him see me cry. That's your choice, Dad, I said quietly. If she's not welcome, neither are you. He raised his glass again, eyes like stone. Your call. And just like that I was suffocating. I left without dessert or goodbyes and drove until headlights blurred with tears. I ended up on familiar roads, pulled by instinct to the place that always meant refuge. Grandpa Henry's porch light glowed like a lighthouse as I turned into his gravel driveway. He opened the door before I reached it, concern etched deep in the lines of his weathered face. Sweetheart, he said, wrapping me in his arms, the comforting scent of cedar, pipe tobacco, and peppermint balm enveloping me. I buried my face in his sweater. It's happening again. He's picking her. Like always. Henry said nothing at first. Just held me, the way he had when I was a child with a scraped knee or a broken heart. Some traditions aren't worth the pain they cause, he murmured into my hair. I sat in his armchair, clutching the warm ceramic mug of coffee he handed me. The room smelled like molasses cookies and old wood, like time itself had slowed to make space for grief. He says if I don't invite Melanie, he won't walk me down the aisle. Henry's jaw tightened. Then maybe it's time someone else did. My eyes met his, startled. You mean? Been waiting 79 years to do something that mattered this much, he said softly. Tears blurred my vision again, but this time, they didn't sting. Your mom would have told you to follow your heart, not trade it in to keep the peace, Grandpa Henry said gently, folding the handkerchief and placing it back in my palm. Logan says the same thing, I murmured. That it's our day. Not theirs. Henry's smile deepened into the fine lines etched by decades of quiet strength. Logan's a wise man. But he's not the only one around here with 2 good legs and a vested interest in seeing you happy. I looked up sharply, his meaning settling over me like morning sunlight breaking through fog. Would you really do it? His weathered fingers closed around mine. Caroline, I've been waiting 79 years to do something that mattered this much. 2 days later, I sat across from my father in the corner booth of Granger's Diner, the same booth where we'd eaten Saturday pancakes when I was little. The neon sign above the window buzzed faintly, casting red light over his furrowed brow. You're not serious, he said, lowering his coffee slowly, his eyes sharp. You're letting Henry walk you down the aisle instead of me? I'm choosing someone who's always shown up, I said evenly. Not just when it's convenient. His jaw clenched. What are people going to say? That I finally decided to stop letting people disrespect me just because we share DNA. The silence thickened. His spoon clattered into his saucer. This is childish. No, I said, calm and clear, this is what grown-up boundaries look like. He stood abruptly, pulling his wallet out with a huff. Bills landed on the sticky tabletop, and he grabbed his coat with jerky movements. You'll regret this, Caroline. I didn't flinch. Maybe? But not as much as I'd regret letting you control me again. The doorbell jingled as he stormed out into the parking lot. I sat in the stillness, breathing slowly, the scent of scorched coffee and old onions clinging to the air. My reflection flickered in the window, older now, steadier. The girl who once stared out that same glass hoping her father would say he was proud. She was still in there somewhere. But now she had company. A woman who didn't need permission to value herself. Before I tell you what happened next, if this story is resonating with you, if you've ever had to stand your ground, even when it meant standing alone, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me keep sharing stories that matter. Now let me tell you what happened when everything changed. A waitress approached with the coffee pot. Top off, hon? I shook my head. I'm good. I've had enough. Back in the bridal loft, the memory faded like mist as the day's rhythm resumed around me. Julie's voice floated in from the hallway, ushering people to their places. I sat still, my phone glowing on the table beside my bouquet. One last message from Dad sat unread. I picked it up, typed 4 words, and hit send. I choose me. Goodbye. Outside, guests were taking their seats beneath the arbor strung with white roses and fairy lights. Somewhere down below, Henry was adjusting his boutonniere with steady fingers. As I stood, smoothing my gown, another memory surfaced, glitter and Elmer's glue covering my hands as I made a Mother's Day card that would never be given. Silver sparkles, red macaroni hearts, and the soft scratch of pencil as I traced the letters carefully, praying they'd be good enough. Back then I didn't understand what I was asking for. But now I did. Love that stayed. That's beautiful, honeybee. Grandpa Henry gently guided my 8-year-old hand as I printed the final word on the card. And remember, day starts with a capital D. My tongue peeked out in concentration as I traced over his penciled letters. Purple construction paper framed in red macaroni hearts, a dusting of silver glitter catching the morning sun streaming through the kitchen window. The smell of glue and cinnamon rolls hung in the air. Then came the sound I dreaded. The front door slammed. Heavy footsteps pounded down the hallway. My father's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. What is this disaster? He stepped into the kitchen, frowning at the glittery chaos spread across the table. His sharp eyes narrowed on the half-finished Mother's Day card. Do you know how long it's going to take to clean all this up? She's making something special, Henry said softly, keeping one hand steady on my shoulder. My father scoffed. It's a waste of time and supplies. Her mother's gone, Caroline. Glitter won't bring her back. I stared at my card, the wet glue glistening like tears. Henry's hand tightened protectively around my shoulder, but I barely felt it. The warmth had drained from the room. Later that night, I tucked the unfinished card into the back of my wooden keepsake box, hidden under birthday ribbons and pressed wildflowers. The glitter clung to my fingers for days, stubborn and luminous, refusing to be washed away. The years that followed were no different. Every Christmas morning, Melanie's pile of gifts towered like a department store display, luxury handbags, expensive makeup kits, concert tickets. My own modest stack sat to the side. Sturdy shoes, school binders, a new set of dish towels the year I turned 15. Oh, Daddy, it's perfect. Melanie had squealed, clutching a buttery leather purse to her chest. I smiled faintly, running my fingers along the cardigan folded in my lap. The stitching was neat, the wool thick and practical. Behind me, a shiny new vacuum cleaner stood with a bow and a tag that read to Caroline. Melanie has good taste, my father had said proudly, watching her spin around in her new boots. She's going to need to look the part when she's running a business someday. His eyes slid toward me, unreadable. And you'll probably settle down, be a homemaker. Best to learn the basics now. That was the rhythm of my adolescence. Melanie got glittering praise and I got elbow grease. While she stretched out on the couch watching music videos, I scrubbed baseboards and folded linens. She joined the cheer team. I picked up shifts at the bookstore after school. She went to parties. I studied late, alone at the kitchen table. But Henry noticed. When my father wasn't around, he would slip college brochures into my notebooks and whisper encouragements like secret spells. You're meant for more than this, honeybee, he told me once, his callous fingers brushing a tear from my cheek as we reviewed essay drafts by the fireplace. Don't let them box you in. I tried to believe him. I really did. Until the Thanksgiving I brought Blake home. Melanie's eyes shifted the moment he stepped through the door. Her smile stretched just a little too wide. Her laugh lingered a little too long. As she walked past Blake, her fingers grazed his arm. Love that jacket, she murmured. Shows off your shoulders. I brushed it off at first. I wanted to trust my own sister. I wanted to believe the family rules I'd grown up with, respect, loyalty, shared history, meant something. But all evening she hovered near him, sitting close, pouring his wine, laughing at every joke like he'd invented comedy. I tried to act unfazed, my gut twisting tighter with each hour. That night, Blake told me he was going to grab some water before bed. He never came back. I woke to low voices in the creak of a door. When I stepped into the hallway, his shirt was unbuttoned, belt half undone. Melanie leaned against her doorframe, wrapped in nothing but a blanket and smug satisfaction. He reached for me, breath reeking of red wine. It didn't mean anything, he slurred. She kissed me. I was drunk, eh? You're always dramatic, Melanie called after me as I fled the hallway. Don't invade my space just because you're boring. The sound of her laughter echoed in my ears long after the door slammed shut behind me. I didn't sleep that night, at least not well. Even after Blake slurred his excuses and Melanie rolled her eyes from her doorway, I couldn't shut out the image of them. His shirt half open, her arms crossed with that smug look she'd worn all our lives. The look that always came right before she took something from me. I left the hallway without a word. My feet carried me, as they always did in crisis, to my father's study. The low hum of classical music drifted through the doorway. He was reclined in his leather chair, the newspaper spread open like a shield between us. Dad, my voice cracked. Something happened. Blake, Melanie. He didn't even look up. They're adults, he said flatly. You should have known better. If you brought home a man with stronger principles, this wouldn't have happened. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were new, but because they confirmed something I'd always feared. He never saw me. Never defended me. Never wanted to. Later that week, I showed up at the family Christmas party because I didn't know what else to do. I'd spent the last few days in a fog, my calls unanswered, Blake already moved out, and Melanie curating an Instagram highlight reel of her holiday cheer like nothing had happened. In the kitchen, I overheard her talking to our cousins as she dipped a chocolate-covered strawberry into a bowl of powdered sugar. One night, she giggled. That's all it took to steal Caroline's guy. I wasn't even trying that hard. She tossed the strawberry into her mouth and smirked. That night, I went home, changed my number, blocked her on every platform, and deleted every group chat I'd ever been in with my family. But the damage had settled deep. Years passed. The silence between us stretched on unbroken. And still, every so often, I'd find myself standing in front of my bookshelf, holding an old photo album I didn't even realize I'd pulled down. In every picture, the truth glared back at me. Melanie in the middle, beaming, glittering, radiant. Dad hovering proudly at her side. And me? Always off to the side. Smiling, but not really. Leaning in, but never quite welcome. As if even back then, I was already preparing myself to be pushed away. I traced the edge of a photo from my high school graduation. Melanie had thrown a tantrum about having to attend, throwing off the entire evening. I smiled through it, shoulders hunched, clutching my diploma like it might make me worthy. And that's when it hit me, not just the betrayal. Not just Melanie's cruelty or Blake's cowardice. But the truth of a lifetime. A childhood trained to accept crumbs and call it love. A father who couldn't protect me because he never believed I was worth the effort. The question that had haunted me for decades finally formed with clarity. When does loyalty become self-destruction? And when do you finally decide enough is enough? The answer had been waiting for me all along, pressed in glitter and dried pasta, buried in the back of a wooden box under my childhood bed. Sometimes love means choosing to leave. The red digits on my bedside clock read 2:17 a.m. I'd fallen asleep as soon as I got home, emotionally wrung out from the final wedding prep and the confrontation at Granger's diner. But now the sharp buzz of my phone pierced the dark, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. My thumb hovered over decline. But something deeper than reflex held me back. Is this Caroline Moore? A woman's voice, measured, professional. Yes, I said, sitting up slowly, the sheets tangling around my waist. This is Dr. Rachel Ingram from St. Helena Regional. Your father, Richard Moore, was admitted about an hour ago. He's stable, but he's suffered a stroke. He's asking for you. The words hit like a glass of ice water down my back. It had been nearly 5 years since I'd spoken to my father. 5 years since the night Blake left and Melanie smirked in a bedsheet. 5 years of silence, distance, and breathing room. But I couldn't ignore the pull of obligation. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I dressed with muscle memory, my hands trembling only once as I zipped up my jacket. Outside, the streets were quiet. The glow of vineyard lanterns gave way to freeway signs and hospital fluorescence. My boots clicked against the polished linoleum floor as I walked into the building I'd avoided for years. Room 312. The door stood slightly ajar, the overhead light humming faintly. He looked smaller, frail beneath crisp white sheets, one side of his face slack. IVs and monitors beeped steadily around him. The man who had once towered in every room now seemed folded into himself. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, something flickered there. Surprise. Regret. Fear. Caroline, he whispered, the consonants slurred. I'm here. I stood at the edge of the room, unsure of what to do with my arms. There were no flowers. No welcome. Just years of pain and unspoken things lingering between us. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital forms and financial strain. His insurance covered only the basics. After 2 days of pushing through red tape, I used nearly all of my savings to hire a private nurse. One who wouldn't be intimidated into cutting corners. One who didn't care who he'd once been. When he was finally discharged, I drove him back to the house he hadn't left in over a month. I unloaded groceries, stocked the fridge with pre-made meals, laid out the medication boxes by the day. Your therapist comes Mondays and Thursdays, I said, noting it on the calendar. Maria will help with the rest. He sat in his recliner, hands folded tightly. You don't have to do this. I know, I replied more curtly than I meant to. Then I softened. But I am. Every time I called Melanie, I got nothing. Voicemail. Read receipts, but no replies. The timing's bad, he muttered when I mentioned her absence. She's not coming, Dad. She was never going to. His eyes didn't argue. Not anymore. Sweat glistened on my father's brow as he gripped the parallel bars in the physical therapy room. The sterile air smelled of sanitizer and rubber mats. His right leg trembled with the effort, and as he took another slow step, his knee buckled. Without thinking, I reached out and steadied him. I've got you, I said gently. He froze, breath ragged, staring at me like he hadn't truly seen me in years. Something in his face cracked open, an old wound beneath a fresh one. You look just like her, he said hoarsely. But it's your heart that really reminds me of your mother. The words caught me off guard. I blinked against the sting rising behind my eyes. I'd imagined hearing those words so many times growing up, only to convince myself they'd never come. She never gave up on people, he added. Even when they didn't deserve it. He turned away, embarrassed, but his fingers held onto mine longer than necessary. A silent thank you that said more than an apology ever could. That evening, over 2 paper cups of lukewarm coffee in the hospital's cafe, he told me about the first time he saw my mother. How she wore a yellow sundress and teased him for stammering through a joke. How she knew every regular's order at the diner where she worked while studying to be a nurse. She'd be proud of you, he said softly, more to himself than to me. The next day, I almost missed Grandpa Henry's visit. I'd stepped out to take a work call, and by the time I returned, the tension in the room was palpable. Everything okay? I asked, eyes moving between the two of them. Henry's jaw was set, his cheeks flushed. Just had a little talk about choices and consequences. Later, as he drove me home, the silence in the car was thick until it finally burst. He punished you for surviving when your mother didn't, Henry said, gripping the wheel tightly. That's not fatherhood. That's fear masquerading as control. Richard had tried to defend himself, but something in Henry's voice must have hit a nerve. I saw it in the slump of his shoulders, in the way he suddenly looked older, smaller. 2 days later, Henry met with his attorney. I'm not being petty, he told me. I'm making something right. By sunset, his signature rested on a new will. At home, he opened an old photo album, his late wife's eyes smiling up at him. The copy of the will went into the drawer beneath it, quiet, certain, waiting. Spring brought wedding plans, floral arrangements, caterers, venues. But one question from a planning app made my breath catch. Who will walk you down the aisle? Richard assumed it would be him. But I wasn't so sure anymore. The entitled tone in my father's voice when he casually mentioned suit fittings made my stomach knot. Like it was already decided. Like nothing between us had ever cracked or broken. Then came the guest list. That's when the illusion shattered. Melanie's your sister, he said over the phone, that familiar sharpness in his voice. She attends or I won't be part of the ceremony. There it was, the same ultimatum he'd used 5 years ago, just dressed in wedding lace. That evening, I found myself on Henry's porch, just like I had 100 times before. The swing creaked gently beneath us, the wooden slats warm from the day's sun. We rocked in silence for a while, watching the horizon turn gold. His hand closed around mine, firm and comforting. I've got one good walk left in me, he said, voice thick. And I wanted to be with you. Tears welled in my eyes, sliding down without permission. For once I didn't hold them back. Some decisions aren't made in a moment. They live in you quietly, waiting for you to finally choose them out loud. Henry just gave me the permission I'd always needed. If someone keeps showing you who they are, he murmured, at some point, you have to believe them. The moonlight caught the rose bushes my grandmother had planted decades ago, their leaves silver in the night. I squeezed his hand. I believe you, Grandpa. And I believed in me too. The morning of my wedding arrived bathed in soft gold. Light spilled through the tall windows of the bridal suite, scattering rainbows off the crystal beading on my dress. My bridesmaids floated around me in sage green, adjusting flowers and bobby pins, laughter light and unburdened. There was no drama. No tension. Just peace. My phone buzzed again, Richard's 5th message. I didn't read it. Just turned the screen face down beside my grandmother's pearl earrings. A gentle knock at the door. Julie, my planner, peeked in. Henry's here. Should I send him up? I nodded. Please. Moments later, he stepped into the room. He wore a charcoal gray suit that hugged his tall frame, a white rose boutonniere neatly pinned to his lapel. His hands, still strong but trembling slightly, smoothed his tie. Caroline, he said, voice catching. You look just like your grandmother on our wedding day. I crossed to him and took his hands in mine. You look handsome, Grandpa. He reached up and touched the pearl at my ear, his eyes glassy. She'd be so proud of you. I know I am. The ceremony space buzzed with quiet anticipation. Music began. My bridesmaids walked ahead of us, bouquets bright in the spring sunlight. The front row seats for Richard and Melanie sat empty, but they didn't haunt me anymore. Henry's arm steadied me. Ready? I nodded, too full to speak. The guests rose. And through them all I saw only Logan standing at the altar, his face lighting up as our eyes met. The world faded away as I stepped onto the aisle, my hand wrapped securely around Grandpa Henry's arm. White rose petals blanketed the path, glowing softly under the sunlight pouring through the chapel's stained glass windows. The only sound I registered was the gentle rustle of my dress and Henry's steady footsteps beside me, measured, dignified, and full of meaning. When we reached the altar, Henry's voice rang out, firm and proud. With all my heart, I give my blessing to this union. The officiant nodded, smiling warmly. Caroline Moore is given in love by her grandfather, Henry Lowell. Logan's hand found mine, warm and sure. Henry pressed a kiss to my cheek before taking his seat. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. Not just about who would walk me down the aisle, but who I allowed to walk beside me in life. The reception was bathed in soft candlelight, flickering across wine glasses and gold-rimmed plates. Laughter and music swirled through the air. When Henry rose for the traditional father's toast, the room fell into respectful silence. I've watched this extraordinary woman grow from a thoughtful little girl who used to shadow me in the garden shed, he began, voice clear and resonant, into someone who turns pain into purpose, who knows how to love even when she hasn't always been shown how. He turned his gaze to me, his expression tender. Caroline, you've reminded me that family isn't built on blood or duty, it's built on choice. On love. And for that reason, as my gift to you and Logan, I'm giving you the lake house at Silver Pine. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My cousin Jill dropped her dessert spoon with a clatter. That property had always been assumed to go to my father. He had spoken of it as if it were already his. Henry continued without missing a beat. Of all my family, only Caroline has ever shown me what it truly means to be family. The air shifted, approval from some, scandalized whispers from others. But when Logan's mother stood and wrapped me in a warm hug, her eyes shining, none of it mattered. We're so lucky to have you, Susan whispered. Truly. The DJ announced our first dance. Logan guided me to the center of the floor as at last filled the air. I rested my head against his shoulder, the swirl of the room fading into quiet peace. You look content, he murmured. I am. The empty chairs didn't matter. The gossip didn't matter. We were building something new. When the music changed for the father-daughter dance, Henry stepped forward, grinning. We're not sitting this one out, are we? The song shifted to What a Wonderful World, and just like when I was 12 in his living room, we danced. Slowly, others joined us. Henry twirled me once, his laughter lifting the air. Look at you, he said softly. Truly happy. The photographer captured the moment mid-laugh, my head back, his eyes shining. And finally, I felt whole. As the final notes of our dance faded, Logan appeared at my side. His hand found mine with ease, steady and warm. This is the beginning of our family, he whispered. The one we choose to build. Later that evening, I was back in the bridal suite, slipping out of my dress and into a linen sundress for our departure. My phone screen lit up, 7 missed calls from my father. Henry stood nearby, holding a garment bag. He didn't say much, just watched as I turned the phone face down and tucked it into my purse. "They'll be waiting when you get back," he said quietly. "But you decide what comes next." Logan and I ran through a cascade of bubbles, laughter echoing behind us as our friends and family cheered us down the drive. As our driver pulled away, I leaned into Logan's shoulder, thinking I knew exactly what the next few weeks would bring. I didn't. But for now I had a honeymoon. 2 weeks of sunrises and slow mornings, snorkeling in clear water, and forgetting what it felt like to brace for tension. When we returned, sunlight danced off the hood of our rental car as Logan pulled into our driveway. The plumeria lay around my neck still held the sweetness of Maui, a scent I wanted to bottle and keep forever. Then I saw him, my father, standing beside his black Mercedes, arms folded across his chest, jaw locked in that way I remembered from childhood, the silent warning that preceded every punishment. He looked thinner. His suit hung loose. The skin beneath his eyes was darker, his pride heavier. "Here we go," Logan murmured, giving my hand a squeeze. Richard strode toward us before I even opened the door. "You humiliated me," he barked. "In front of everyone." I stepped out slowly, calm despite the firestorm in his voice. "I celebrated my wedding with people who supported me." "Supported?" He scoffed. "I expected better from you. No one turns their back on blood." "Sometimes blood turns its back first," I said evenly. We walked toward the house. His footsteps followed hard, scraping against the concrete like a scolding I couldn't shake. Inside, cool air met us. The pictures from our honeymoon sat waiting to be hung, carefully stacked on the coffee table. Logan hovered near the kitchen, alert but silent, giving me room. And then, finally, I asked the question that had haunted me since I could form words. "Why do you hate me?" His posture faltered. He gripped the back of our couch like it might hold him upright. His lips parted. "You want the truth?" "For once," I said. "Yes." His words dropped like stones. "I didn't want a second child. I begged your mother not to go through with the pregnancy." My stomach dropped. But he wasn't finished. "When she died giving birth to you, I couldn't look at you without seeing the mistake I made." My knees buckled. I collapsed onto the edge of the nearest chair, the sharp edge biting into my thigh. Everything in me fractured and reformed stronger. 'Cause now I knew. "So you punished a baby for being born," I said, the words brittle in my throat. "You don't understand," he began. "No," I cut in, steady now. "I understand perfectly." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message. I knew who it was before I even looked. I pulled it out. More venom from Melanie. I scrolled quickly, holding up the screen. "Look at this." His eyes dropped to the phone. Post after post, Melanie's signature brand of cruelty laid bare for the world to see, mocking me for seducing Grandpa into rewriting his will, accusing me of manipulating a fragile old man to steal what she thought was rightfully hers. "She's been doing this for years," I said, my voice firm. "Talking about me behind my back, poisoning every family gathering. And you let her." His mouth opened then closed. He had no defense. "But here's what I can't figure out," I continued. "When you had your stroke, when you couldn't walk or feed yourself, who was there?" I stood up slowly. "Who sat beside you in the hospital? Who paid the bills insurance didn't cover? Who hired Maria when the state cut your therapy hours?" Silence. Heavy. Like fog made of lead. I stared at him. Where was Melanie? Did she show up even once? His gaze dropped, guilt flickering behind tired eyes. "No," he whispered. "No," I echoed, my voice firmer. "Because she only comes when there's something to take. And you've been too blind or maybe too proud to see it." He winced. "I've been wrong about you." The words scraped out of him, raw, reluctant. "About everything." Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't for him. They were for the little girl who'd spent hours making a glittered card no one ever read. For the teenager who cleaned baseboards while her sister threw parties. For the woman who'd spent her entire life waiting to be seen. I took a breath. "Your apology is 34 years too late," I said, voice shaking with truth. "This ends here." His eyes darted toward me, wounded. "Don't call. Don't ask for help again. Ask your favorite daughter next time." He stepped toward me, desperation softening his face. "We're still family. Blood means something." he said, almost pleading. I walked to the door and pulled it open. Respect means more. He lingered on the threshold, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the towering man who had loomed over my childhood. I saw a man who had let grief curdle into resentment. The door clicked shut. I leaned against it, Logan's arms already around me. I exhaled, all the strength I'd mustered finally crumbling into his shoulder. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Melanie. I opened my contacts, my fingers calm, and blocked them both. The late afternoon light poured into our living room, stretching across the coffee table where empty frames waited to be filled. Henry called just as I wiped the last tear from my cheek. You did what I never had the courage to do, he said, his voice rough with pride. Sometimes loving yourself means letting go. Outside, the wind picked up a set of wind chimes on the porch. Soft music danced through the open windows and I closed my eyes. Forgiveness didn't mean giving someone another chance to hurt me. It meant giving myself the chance to heal. I used to study family photos the way some people study maps, searching for a route into a place I never quite reached. In every frame I stood slightly off to the side, not by accident but instinct. As if some part of me already knew I didn't belong. But here, in this sun-washed home that Logan and I chose together, surrounded by warmth and chosen family, I finally felt it, the quiet certainty of belonging. No conditions. No proving. Just love given and received. The truth came gently, like light filtering through linen curtains. Sometimes the family you build loves you better than the one you're born into. I rested a hand on my stomach. Still flat. Still secret. I'd found out a month ago, right in the thick of wedding chaos. But I hadn't told Richard. Couldn't. This child, our child, would never know the cold sting of being unwanted. They would never need to earn their place. Their presence was enough. Some chains are forged in blood, others in love. I had chosen mine. And for the first time I could breathe freely. The following weekend we made our way up to the lake house. A warm breeze drifted through the open windows, scented with fresh paint and pine. I ran my fingers along a newly sanded windowsill, the wood smooth beneath my touch. The same sill where Henry once propped up my tackle box as I learned to fish, age 8, beaming with pride at my first catch. Framed photos of Henry and Grandma Ruth smiled down from the mantel, their faces worn by time, but no less vivid. Logan's footsteps creaked on the stairs. Contractor's done with the master bath, he said, slipping his arms around me. His hand found mine on the sill, anchoring us both. Want to see? In a minute, I murmured, leaning back into his chest. Outside, the late afternoon sun poured across Lake Serenity, gilding everything in soft gold. Our friends were arriving, unloading folding chairs and coolers from their cars. Can you believe this is really ours? I whispered. Henry knew what he was doing, Logan said, kissing my temple. He called earlier, by the way. Said he's bringing that famous barbecue marinade of his. The gathering unfolded like a memory already in the making. Henry sat in his favorite Adirondack chair, showing Logan's dad how to gut trout. My mother-in-law, Sarah, lined peach pies on the outdoor buffet with quiet authority. I carried Henry a glass of lemonade and settled beside him, watching kids chase fireflies near the dock. Logan, Sarah called from the kitchen. Come rescue your dad from the grill. I smiled as Logan jogged toward her. Their easy affection still amazed me. The Mitchells had taken me in like I'd always been theirs. Sunday dinners, family texts, birthday breakfasts. No performance required. The screen door slammed as Mark, Logan's old roommate, emerged with his toolbox. Nursery's getting painted tomorrow, he grinned, plopping into a chair. Hope you're ready. I looked out at the glowing lake, my hand drifting again to the gentle curve of my stomach. I've never been more ready. I've got a steady hand with trim work, Mark grinned, tapping his toolbox with his foot. My fingers brushed the gentle swell beneath my sundress. As long as you don't mind working around the crew, they're still finishing the built-ins. The more the merrier, he said, raising his beer. This little one's going to have the best nursery on the lake. The evening stretched into twilight, soft and golden. Citronella candles glowed along the deck railing, their light flickering across familiar faces and the silhouettes of folding chairs. I slipped away to check the dessert table, Sarah's pies, lemon bars from Mia, a stack of mismatched plates. Then I saw it. An envelope slightly smudged, tucked against the corner of the pie stand. My heart lurched. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Slanted. Forceful. Richards. Pressed into the paper like every word had been carved out of restraint. I didn't even think. My feet carried me to the dock like they remembered it better than my mind. The same dock where Henry once taught me how to cast a line and let the world grow quiet. I sat on the bench, the wood cool beneath me, the envelope weighty in my hand. The letter inside was short. No dramatics. No excuses. Just sentence after sentence of unvarnished regret. I let anger turn into armor. I failed you. You deserved better than I gave. The final line cracked something open in my chest. Just 6 words, but they echoed years of silence. You deserved better than I gave. There was a postscript. A mention of Melanie. She had moved to Seattle after their final argument, he wrote. Maybe it's for the best, was all he said. And somehow it was. Thought I'd find you here, Henry said behind me, his footsteps familiar as breath. He eased down beside me, groaning softly as his knees met the bench. The letter trembled in my lap. He wrote it months ago, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But he never sent it. Henry didn't speak for a long moment. When he did, his voice was soft and steady. Forgiveness isn't about them, Caroline. It's about freeing you. I leaned into his shoulder, his arm wrapping around me like a blanket I didn't know I still needed. My hand found my stomach, instinctively protective. This child would never doubt they were wanted. Not for a single breath. Henry's voice cracked a little. Beth would be proud. Of the woman you've become. Of the mother you'll be. Above us, stars began to blink into the sky, their reflections dancing across the dark surface of the lake. Behind us, laughter and soft conversation drifted from the house, our house, full of the people who had shown up and stayed. The letter stayed in my pocket. Acknowledged, but no longer defining me. I looked out over the water, resting my hand on the rise of my belly. Hey little one, I whispered. Welcome to the family we chose. The one we're building together. From the deck, Logan called my name, his voice full of love and steady joy. I stood, offering Henry my hand. Let's go back in. To our people. The ones who made family mean something real, at last. I've carried so much silence in my life, silence around pain, around betrayal, around the things I wasn't supposed to speak about because they made others uncomfortable. But I've learned that healing begins the moment we choose our own voice over someone else's expectations. If you've listened this far, thank you. Really. Means more than you know. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family? Have you ever drawn a line in the sand and said, this far, no further? If so, leave me a comment. Let me know what gave you the strength to do it, or if you're still trying to find that strength. You're not alone. And if you're just beginning to untangle yourself from toxic love or generational patterns, please believe this. Your peace is not selfish. It's sacred. This story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who's been dismissed, overlooked, or told to shrink so someone else could shine. I chose love, but not just the romantic kind. I chose self-respect, chosen family, and a future where my child will grow up knowing they were wanted from the very beginning. So if this story moved you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people find these stories, people who might be right where I was. Standing on the edge of a hard choice, wondering if they're strong enough. You are. We all are. And sometimes it just takes hearing someone else say it first. So let me be the first to say it to you now. You deserve better. You always did. Now go build the life that proves it.